Good morning, Croasdaile residents, and welcome to the next Croasdaile podcast. And this is a great time for you to listen in. By the way, tell your friends and neighbors they need to watch some of these things, okay? Now, today, let me introduce our person we're talking to this morning. Mr. Ed Hughes is here. So let's go with the first questions, Ev.
Well, good morning, Jim. You almost said star guest. But,
star guest, that's a good one.
It didn't quite come out that way.
No, it didn't.
Good morning, Jim.
But anyway, we'll go with it. Well, glad you're here. Tell me, what is the history of Ed Hughes? Uh-oh.
How much time do you have?
It keeps running.
I don't mean it that way. First, let me thank you for the invitation. It's certainly appreciated on my part, and I know these podcasts have been going well for you, and hopefully this will be another one that will go well. I'm one of those folks that is transplant to the South, but that's been for a good number of years. I was born in New Jersey, and grew up in New Jersey in a very, very small town of 5,000 people. And if your mother didn't manage what you were doing, every neighbor and everybody in town did, because it was kind of that small. But it was a great upbringing. I'm probably a little bit older than some of the folks that you've had on here, so I go back to quite a remembrance of the Depression. Having born in 1930, it was the Depression was obviously part of my growing up. My father had lost his job, and so, like many people, we moved back into my grandparents' house, and I ended up all my days in Boonton, New Jersey, in my grandparents' house. One of the things that your audience may know about is, and a claim to fame for it in the little town of Boonton, is something called Boontonware. And that was the first plastic, hard plastic dishes that were made right during the war and at the end of the war, and was known in the line of product as Boontonware. And it's actually today it's a collector's item. So if you have any Boontonware, you could be richer than you think you are. Anyhow, high school in Boonton, and in high school, I lettered in a couple of sports. I had the good fortune of being president of the Student Association in my senior year, and so all went well. I was the first one to get up and get out of town and go on to university, which I consider to be very, very fortunate to do so. And I went to Rutgers University in New Jersey, and a couple of interesting points. Well, the folks down here are the Duke folks, the North Carolina Tar Heels, and the NC State folk, and so forth and so on. A couple of interesting things about Rutgers that a lot of people might not know, and one of those is that Rutgers is the 8th oldest and longest running college university in the United States. It was one of original 9 chartered schools prior to the Revolution. The school goes all the way back to 1766 and was originally known as Queen's College. And for those that might be wondering, what is King's College? And actually, Columbia University in New York was one of those 9, and it was known as King's College. But 1766 is the foundation of the school. Another very interesting thing about Rutgers is that the first recognized college football game was played in New Brunswick, New Jersey at Rutgers University, and the opponent was Princeton, which was at that time known as the College of New Jersey, and Rutgers won 9-6 in the first intercollegiate football game in the history of college football. Now, for some of those people out there that don't think much of Rutgers athletics, they will tell me that may have been the first game that they won and the last. So, well, anyhow, Rutgers University, 4 years. It's 4 years at school. I was very, very fortunate because the Korean War was on at the time. I was very, very fortunate to be deferred to finish my senior year at school. And during school, I was involved in things, if you will. I was a manager of the baseball team, the varsity baseball team at Rutgers, which was a great experience, especially since our coach at that time was an ex-major leaguer. Some of your old-time baseball buffs may know the name George Case, who was the stolen base leader for the major leagues during the 1930s. Anyhow, that was an experience. Knowing George, and every once in a while some other major leaguers would show up at practice and the like. That was a great experience. Anyhow, another thing that I did while I was at school was I was house manager of the fraternity house. And if you ever want to try out your early leadership credentials, if you will, try being a house manager in a fraternity house. half of which the guys were returning veterans, and the other half were young kids just trying to find their way and have a good time. So that was an early test of, if you will, any managerial abilities. I went into the Air Force 2 weeks after I graduated. As I said, I had been deferred. We knew that was going to happen, and did. I was in the Air Force stationed in Texas. While I was there, the war was winding down and closing out, so that people that weren't career were given the opportunity to leave, because when we went in on an indeterminate time frame as to what you were supposed to serve. So I have no problem then and today, of having served my country given whatever time they asked me to do, none whatsoever. But I knew that Air Force was certainly not a career for me. So we were married at the time. I got married during that period, and I said we were living in Texas. So I opted to get out. I hired on with IBM in Houston, and that's a whole another story. How did that happen? I knew I was getting out. I didn't have a job. I knew I had to find a job before I got out, since we were married. And I was sitting at a PX one day, having a cup of coffee, and reading through the Air Force Times, and there was an article in the back. If any of you have the following, what do you want to call it? Qualifications, whatever the case may be. We could be interested in you. And I said, well, okay, it looks like me, so I ripped it out and stuffed it in my khaki pocket, took it home, threw it on the bureau, and it'd been there for a long period of time. I never did write to this guy. And Marilyn finally said one day, she said, if you don't do something about that, I'm going to take that piece of paper and throw it away. Okay. So I duly wrote and got an answer back, and that started my interest in IBM. And I spent all of my life in IBM as a career, all of which was in either direct sales or direct sales management or staff management. At the end of my career, I was going to say less than illustrious, but career, I ended up in the human resources side of a big marketing division. And at that point in time, I was in Atlanta, having spent a good part of my time up in the Northeast and Western New York State in those various jobs and management positions. And I had a fairly significant responsibility for recruiting on a nationwide basis, not actually recruiting itself, but running recruiting programs and doing some actual recruiting, of course. So I was involved with that. We were involved, at that point in time, there was a lot of redeployment of people. And this would have been the 80s when things were shifting in the economy, and we were moving people around. So I had a lot of time and effort spent in that regard. And then the last few years, I was the employee relations manager for that division for the whole Southeast. And that was dealing with all the guns, sex, drugs, booze, all the fun kind of thing. But it was very challenging, but very interesting, and I wouldn't say it was a fun job, a lot of travel. But that's it. Anyhow, I retired and spent a few years in consulting work. Did some here, did some overseas, and that's my work experience.
Okay, Ed, here's my question. You spent all that time up in the Northeast and some down in the Southeast, or whatever you want to call it, Georgia. But how did you and Marilyn decide to come to Croasdaile Village?
I'll answer that question, but the interesting thing is we've lived in the South many more years than we've lived any place else.
Oh, okay.
Which, because we moved to the South in 78, so we've been, what's that, 22, almost 50 years, I guess, since we've been in the South. So, anyhow, we were sitting in a rural county. I had retired out of Atlanta, and we were okay, where do we go now, folks? And it occurred to me at that point in time that for the first time in my life, the move was our choice as to where we go. And that presented an interesting kind of dynamics, because also now the world is open going. Anyhow, what we ended up doing was moving to the North Georgia mountains, about 50, 60 miles due north of the Atlanta airport. A rural county and a small community and the like. And we had really a good run up there. And the house that we had at the time, we were sitting up on top of a mountain, and we had a nice vista and all that good kind of stuff. But we were getting on, and the idea was, hey, this is not good because the nearest town is 10 or 12 miles away, and the grocery stores are the same thing, and there's no public transportation, and anytime you wanted to go to a doctor, it was an hour. If it was anything serious, you had to go to Atlanta. Anyhow, it made sense for us to start thinking about what do we do. Okay. The trick was to again say, okay, we need to get closer to one of our children. And we had a son who was living in Wake Forest, North Carolina, and a daughter who was living in Jackson, Wyoming. And the choice was, well, wait a minute, it seems to me there's only one choice there, is that we really ought to head towards North Carolina. So that's what we did. And the intent was to get closer to, not on top of, not next door, not in with, but closer to. And that prompted us to make that commitment in our mind, and then started to look around the whole, if you will, Raleigh-Durham area at all CCRCs, because by that time we had also made up our mind that if we could make it make sense, a CCRC looked like the right thing for us to do. So we investigated most of these CCRCs in the Raleigh-Durham area, if you will, and ended up here at Croasdaile. And we've now been at Croasdaile. We'll be starting our 13th year in this month, coming month.
Ah, so 13 years, that's your lucky year, isn't it?
It is. Every year is a lucky year, especially now. Matter of fact, they get luckier every day. But 13, we'll be starting our 13th year. Actually, we moved into Croasdaile Village. We moved into Croasdaile Village exactly on our 60th wedding anniversary day. And I remember saying to Mel, well, maybe taking us 60 years, but we finally found a place to stay.
Okay, Ed, since you've lived here forever,
It always seems that way.
Tell me, what have you been doing while you've been here?
Okay, sure. Shirley.
Shirley?
Yeah, Shirley is my fifth grade English teacher. So it's not sure, Everett, it's Shirley. I guess the simplest way to say it is it's been a continuation of my life from pretty much no matter where we've lived. I have always been involved with the community that I lived in and or the church that I have been involved with in terms of volunteerism, if you will. I always felt that people had a responsibility to the society that they live in to try to help, if you will, make society better. So if in the communities that I was in, if people felt that I had something to contribute, then I was very, very willing to do so. So that has followed me pretty much all my life. I mean, if you go all the way back to even high school and college, it was taking on some responsibilities and the like, and that has followed me through. So that's a mantra that I live with, that Marilyn lives with here. There's been a variety of things that I've been involved with over the last 12 years. A lot of the committee work. First of all, I've been on the Buildings and Grounds. And I have some background in that area. I was on the Finance Committee because I have some background in finance. I was the chairman of the Employee Appreciation Gift Fund for 2 years. And I have been involved with the Dining Committee and probably more specifically, I guess the last 3 or 4 years, chairman of the Dining Committee here at Croasdaile. So I've had a lot of involvement in the community and in those kinds of things. In addition, I've had the good fortune of being asked by executive management to participate in some, I wouldn't say ad hoc committees, but some advisory kinds of things. So that has kept me busy. From a church standpoint, we go to St. Matthew's Episcopal Church in Hillsborough, and that church is celebrating its 200th anniversary this year. I happen to be on the Archives Committee at that church, and there's a huge amount of archives information available that a couple of residents here have been really instrumental in, and that is Elaine and John Croasdaile, who chaired the Archives Committee over there. And the codification of information that we have that goes all the way back a couple hundred years is just absolutely remarkable about what's available. So anyhow, I've done a little bit of participation there. You people, if you're doing your mathematics, have already figured out that I'll be 95 in June, but I'm still playing golf. There's a bunch of guys, 3 or 4 of us that get together, try to get together once a week that are of an age that we don't keep score anymore. If you get tired of a hole, you just pick up the ball, put it in your pocket, and go on from there. But all of us really think so much of still looking forward to getting out there, getting exercise, and the like. So I would say here at Croasdaile, it's been a continuation of what my life has always been, which is trying to be of assistance to the community. I mean, in one way or another, in a variety of ways, as well as some degree of church activity, as well as some degree of physical activity, keeping yourself busy.
Sounds great, Ed. And I want to thank you at this point for coming to our podcast and exposing us to all the things that you used to do.
Jim, thank you so very much for the invitation once again. And by the way, I like your digs here.
we can move into your place.
In the winter time, do you have a fire on?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well.
The button don't work. I tried it.
Okay, thanks, Jim. All right, sure.